Steve Rosenthal. Do I have a motion of last month's minutes?
I move approval of minutes.
Second.
As written.
A motion on the floor and a second to approve the minutes from November as written. Any further discussion? I have a roll call vote. Mark Denny.
Yes.
Alan Storr.
Yes.
Jaden Bailey.
Yes.
Will Smith.
Yes.
Rocky Hempel.
Yes.
Tom Dials.
Yes.
Jeff Spink.
Yes.
Motion carries 7. 4, 5, 7. Secretary's report, and welcome back.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. It's good to be back. You did a great job. Amy and Josh did a great job in my absence, and I very much appreciate it. Commissioners, we have a couple of items to talk about this evening. The first is we've discussed having a work session for the comprehensive plan. I sent out an email last week seeing if January 5th would be an okay date. That's the first Wednesday. If that is not an okay date, please just let me know, and we can look for something else. But we do want to go ahead and start taking a look at our comprehensive plan. What we want to do is that we're going to have 2 meetings. The first meeting will be open to the public, and the public will be able to come in and give us an idea of things that they think perhaps need to be changed, things that they think might be working well. We will compile all of that information. We'll have a second work session, which the public will be invited to if they wish to come, but they won't be able to speak at it. That will just be for the commissioners and for staff to go through the items that we heard at that first meeting, and then to begin to decide where exactly we need to amend the comprehensive plan so we can go ahead and make any amendments that we need to. Sorry, Rocky, I thought you had a question.
Well, I do have one. What was the date again?
January 5th
5th, okay.
was the date that I threw out there.
I thought you said the 6th, and that's what threw me off.
So just kind of keep that in mind. Like I said, if it doesn't work, let me know. We do want to make sure we get that publicized in plenty of time. We want to have it on our Facebook page and on our web page and such. So if you all can, a couple of you have responded back, but
Would that be an evening?
yeah,
Okay.
probably like 5:30 to 7, sort of time frame. And then we'll schedule that second meeting afterwards. And then hopefully we'll move forward with adopting the amendments to the comprehensive plan. Commissioners, we have 3 items on the consent agenda. We have, which will be approved if you so choose. You can pull anything off the consent agenda if you need to. And then we have 5 items on the regular agenda this evening. That is all that I have.
Any declarations, anybody? Okay, we're ready for approval of the consent agenda.
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Excuse me?
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Before we do that, there's one item that I think we should at least discuss out and take it out of the consent agenda part, and that is on the child subdivision. I think it's, and I guess can I discuss it now?
You can
My
say
reasoning is the subdivision looks all okay, except a road is not dedicated to go to the west. And if you look at Lee Child's second plat, it has roads going to the east, dedicated going to the east and south. Why there wasn't one at that time going to the west, I have no idea. But this would be the last chance that we would have to get a road going to the west on that one. And I think good planning says there should be a road there that's dedicated to go to the west. So again, that's my thoughts on it, and I would sure like to maybe just discuss it if nothing else. And
Can we get a picture of it up there?
I'm sure they can get pictures of it up there. So.
We will have a picture of it up there for you.
You know, all I'm asking to do is pull it out of the consent agenda at this time. I think discussion should go on when we actually discuss it, if you're willing to discuss it. think there's been a lot of subdivisions around that wasn't planned like that, and they're paying for that, and especially when it's this close to the city, and more than likely that's going to end up in the city someday, the city of Basehor.
Mr. Dials, you can let your motion stand as is, or you can amend.
Well, that's why I said we could have this discussion with the motion seconded and amend the motion to pull it out. Is that correct?
Yeah, so if we're going to pull it off the consent agenda, we need to make a motion to approve the consent agenda without that,
That stands.
and then we will discuss.
So if someone seconds my motion to
I'll
approve the
second it.
consent agenda, then we can go ahead and amend.
So the motion is to approve it as it's written at this time, correct?
Yeah, and then
Okay.
the discussion would be you want to pull out. At least that's the way I understand Robert's Rules of Board.
Yeah. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as written. Do you guys want to see it first, or do you want to just?
I think we're in the discussion period now.
Okay, all right. Well,
And you've kind of made the case, so
I
we
made
can
the
look
case
at it
what I
and see.
thought. Now it's up to everybody else.
So we're looking for east-west. I'm looking at the plat now that's on page 77 of the,
Yeah, you could pull that up and maybe.
is there a
show
road to the
where
north
it
and
was
more to
on
the south
second
of the
phase
platted area?
of the subdivision. There is roads going to the east and south.
Yeah,
I don't
Evans
know
Road.
why one wasn't
This is
made
what,
going to the west. It really is. You can see on this one, there is no road dedicated to go. But if you look at Lee Child's second edition,
Okay.
So let's take a look here. And our subdivision regulations, they do allow for roads to be constructed to allow future subdivisions and adjacent properties. That is something that is allowed. It is not necessarily required. I think Mr. Rosenthal brings up a valid point that those properties to the west are likely to develop at some point in time. And I'm not sure. This is just the preliminary plat. This is what these discussions are for.
you see
So-
there's a road that goes to the east, that ends at the property to the east. And if you look at the south, there's one that dead ends at the property on the south. I don't know if that road is actually in or not, but it's dedicated to be there if
No, it's not.
future development is, and that's all that needs to be there. I don't necessarily see a road needs to be constructed.
What you're saying is you got a loop off of Evans Road there, but nothing that would
Yeah,
allow you to go
right.
right away.
So if one doesn't come there, there's going to be at least a quarter of a mile before a road could connect to the.
Now, I will say from a planning perspective, if that west 40 acres, that's what that property directly adjacent to it, if that were to be developed at the same density that the Lee Child subdivision is, we would certainly want to see, if at all possible, and we've not discussed this with Public Works or anything like that, this is just preliminary discussion, but we would want to see an entrance off of Evans Road. We certainly would not want another 35 or 40 homes accessing off of.
No, it would
Off
be
of-
just another entrance off instead of having Evans Road, the entrance going off Evans Road and just dead ended. It could actually have another street to go off it and have some connectivity in the subdivisions, and who knows, those might be even smaller lots on septic sewer at that time.
So, depending on when it happens, that may very well be the case. When this first came before us 18 months or so ago, when the rezoning was originally presented, I did speak with the city of Basehor. They indicated at that time, granted, this has been over a year ago and things do change, as we very much know that. Their primary focus was to the east of here. They, at that time, were not looking at sanitary sewer. You are correct, Mr. Rosenthal, that sanitary sewer comes through there. We may very well see smaller lots. If this were to develop in the nearer future with the adjoining 1 acre subdivision, the 1 acre subdivision that we're discussing this evening, and the amendments to the sanitary code that we've recently seen, I would not be at all shocked if it were to come in at 1 acre if this was any time in the next
Correct.
5 to 7 years or so.
But the road to the connecting would still be a good planning, correct?
I don't think it's a terrible idea. Definitely, I think that connectivity is incredibly important. Again, that's why we're here to discuss this. Do any of the other members of the Planning Commission have thoughts on this?
Well, by this phase of the subdivision, it's the third phase. That'll give them 2 entrances. That's more than they've ever had. The second phase and the first phase was all just built with 1 entrance in and out, where this one allows for a second phase or second entrance to get in
Yes.
and get out.
Yes.
To me, if they want to develop to the west, whoever wants to develop that to the west can dedicate an easement.
Well, not after it's built out, not after the plat is approved. You couldn't go east with it.
No, you couldn't go east, no.
No. Well, I did what I wanted to do. I wanted to bring it up and bring it to you.
So that's a motion to pull it
You
from
have
the
a
consent
motion to
agenda.
approve it.
You want to amend my motion to pull this, the third plat?
I want to let us decide that. If we got a motion on the floor with a second. Unless you want to amend it, I'd say let's vote on it. And if it passes, we'll
I have no objection to amending the motion to pull this out of the consent agenda if you want to do that.
Okay.
I don't either.
You don't either? Okay, so now your motion is to approve the consent agenda with the exception of Lee Child's.
Amended to pull Child's third plat out of the consent agenda. So the other 2 go through.
Everybody understand the motion? Any further discussion?
I would prefer that we go ahead and pass a preliminary and deal with it with the final.
So the preliminary plat is really the time to discuss these items.
Yeah.
Ideally, we will have all of this hammered out and agreed upon before a final plat is submitted. Once a final plat is submitted, I know everyone is always antsy to get things moving forward, but once we have a final plat submitted, the developer is ready to move forward. I hate to hold them up if this is something that we can come to consensus on this evening.
Well, I figured if nothing else, we can at least discuss it and see what our feelings are on that. If that's something we want to start looking at doing, or if it's something that we don't feel is important, then so be it too. So.
Well, there's another option Rocky brings up, being it's a preliminary plat. So,
Yeah, right. It's a time to do it. If we want to adjust it, it's the time to do it, not any farther along than what it is already. So. Or any further discussion on the motion? Everybody understands the motion. It's to approve the consent agenda, but removing the Lee Shell subdivision. Roll call vote. Mark Denny.
Yes.
Ellen Stork.
Yes.
Jaden Bailey.
Yes.
Will Smith.
Yes.
Rocky Hempel.
This means we're pulling it off the consent agenda, but are we denying the preliminary one?
No, we're not
Okay.
denying
Just pulling it
anything.
off.
We're just
Okay,
discussing it. And
okay, pull
we
it.
could still approve it just the way it is. I mean,
Okay.
I'm not saying
That's fine.
we shouldn't.
Yes.
I'm just saying let's discuss it and see what we all feel.
So where does it go from here?
Goes on the regular agenda.
It just goes to the
Well,
regular agenda and we talk about it tonight.
Yeah, we're just going to talk about it, and then goes. Either they revise if we say we want the road, they'll revise it. If they don't want the road, then that. It doesn't go to the county commissioners until the final plat is approved anyway. So, Tom Dials.
Yes.
Jeff Spink.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Okay, so that will be the first one we discussed today then.
Yes, sir.
The American County Planning Zoning Commission will now hear case number DEV 21-176, preliminary plat of Lee Child's third edition. It's outlined in the posted agenda. This is not a public hearing item. Staff report.
Hi, good morning, Commissioner, or good evening, Commissioners, I'm sorry. Before you is preliminary plat for Lee Child's third edition. This is the third phase of, as you can see, the Lee Child's subdivision. The property in question is actually two lots located, as you can see, on Evans Road and approximately 169th Street. The applicant is proposing to subdivide a 12-lot subdivision, which requires preliminary and final be submitted separately. On the plat that was provided to you, you will see that they are just extending off of 169th Street, extending that up and connecting to Evans Road. The lots in question do meet the minimum standards for the R1 zoning district, which is approximately 1 acre in size with a 150-foot frontage. There is an existing house on the property to the north, which will be remaining on Lot 12 of the subdivision plat. However, they also have a barn, a silo, that will be coming down. That will obviously be where the road would be installed. So those will be removed with this plat. In addition to that, there is a pond existing on the property. A lot line is proposed to go through that pond, which is not something staff generally is supportive of, but it is in conformance of the regulations. So they are good to go. In addition to that, they are vacating a utility easement that runs along, in the middle of Lot 4, and I believe that's Lot 8 down there. Based off of the information that was provided, there are no utilities within that easement, so the vacation of that easement is supported by staff. And I believe the last question that you had was whether or not a road should, or a road spur should be off of 169th and connect to the west property line. So I guess I'll leave it at that. Staff was in support of this proposal because it was matching the other side of the subdivision. But obviously that is something that you guys can look at and request. So.
Okay, any questions of staff? This time? Does the applicant wish to speak?
Good evening, Commissioners. Joe Herring, Herring Surveying, 315 North 5th Street. Good evening, staff. Staff pretty much said everything except for the addressing of the road going west. That was talked about with the developer, and we went through the process. Staff never asked for it. Staff didn't address it during our preliminary meetings. Through any of the review process of the preliminary road plans or any of those steps, during the rezone, this was pretty contested in getting this to a 1 acre rezone. It was actually I believe our first rezone to 1 acre in the county, and the property owner to the west was objecting to it, as well as the majority of the people in the subdivision not wanting to add these 12 homes. I couldn't imagine if we were saying we're going to add 20 or 30 more homes to their road network. My opinion is that when 21 does develop, much as Crystal stated, they will need their own access to Evans Road anyway, and not inviting all that traffic into the subdivision that already has 46 lots on a single access point. So it'll have 58 lots on 2 access points. So it was thought about. It just didn't seem that it was necessary at the time from the developer, and was not requested by staff through any of the reviews that were submitted. Any questions?
Any questions?
How many houses were in that first and second phase?
I believe it's 46 or 48.
48, okay.
So that would actually leave a total of 60 onto the 2 access points.
Any other questions of the applicant?
Then it was my understanding also when we heard it for the rezone. The property owner to the west definitely did not want the project.
Correct. The property owner was here in opposition to the rezone.
Yeah.
And so didn't want to.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any further information to be presented?
No, sir. No, sir.
Are there any questions or comments, or I'll entertain a motion? What's your guys' thought on that? I mean, wise planning shows there should be a road, but not necessarily something they've done in the past. And I know there are some subdivisions out there that were being hurt us because there wasn't connectivity. I don't know why they didn't on the second phase, but.
Well, that's what I was going to say. There's not one on the other side. I mean, that's.
Well, there is. There's one to the east and there's one to the west. There's south, but there's not one.
There's one to the south. Yes.
Yeah.
There's also one to the.
There's one right.
Oh, there.
176,
Okay.
isn't it?
There's one
Yeah.
just in the middle.
What is that road? Orchard Road.
Or
It's
169?
dedicated to go to the east, and
I
then
didn't see that. My apologies.
and then there's one at the very south, right there, that goes to the south, and they were put in, but it was stopped there and not continued on to the west, and I don't know why that was. And
Where would you propose to connect to the west now?
right at the first place available, right there, right after the one that's already been platted. Have it just go off of that.
Smart place for them for that Orchard Road to continue.
Well, it'd be nice, but there's a house there. I mean, we can't. That's too late. And once we approve that, it's too late for the other place also. So, again, that's my thoughts, and apparently that's something they did think about at least, but never got done. But I think it's something we should think about, and probably think about in the future. Subdivisions, especially when they're that close to city limits of any city.
The land to the west is a separate owner.
It's a different owner, yeah. And
He opposed,
he probably doesn't want to develop it at this time, but it's going to develop at some time.
but he was
You
in
know,
opposition to
and
the
now's the
one.
time to put the road in, not after this one's developed. So that's my thoughts on it.
Joe, I know we're putting you on the spot on this, but if you did put a road in there going to the west, would you be able to keep the same number of lots, or would you lose a lot?
I think you'd lose one.
Most likely would lose one. The first lot that comes off of there is a little deeper because of the rear setback and the amount of lateral fields that are in place for that house existing. So there's not a lot of room there. There is a lot, or there is a track, or not a track, a road that does go south out of the phase 2. But to my knowledge, didn't that come back in front of the county when the person to the south wanted to build their house? Did they not stop that in the subdivision to the south? I believe there was some sort of hearing on that to not allow that road to come through onto Dwyer because of a pond. And so I don't know if that road is even, if that access point is viable to get another road through there. And our thoughts were if planning staff and the public works staff and they wanted it, they would have asked us to put it in our pre-application meeting and through all the reviews. They would have said we need another access point, and they did not. They never addressed it. So this has passed all their reviews and the layouts in conformance with today's regulations.
What else? Are you talking about putting the road in possibly where the, at the front of the project closest to Evans, or are you talking about putting it to the back? To the back. Well, I think you'll lose that lot because that's only 1.05 acres.
Yeah,
Well,
they're,
but you
they're
could
all
probably
pretty
take it
tight.
off of that first lot, couldn't you?
The lateral field sits pretty far south, and that's what drove the depth of that first lot.
Oh, that first lot has the light.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would probably lose a lot. And
Yeah,
again,
I see that.
Because other than that, they're all pretty close.
Yeah. Again, I really didn't want to throw a wrench in the subdivision preliminary plat, but I think it's something we need to watch when we approve plats, because I know there's some approved that I know is coming back to haunt us and haunt the county and the city, who's probably going to take them over. So I think it's just something we should consider when we're talking about plats that are so close to the city limit, especially. But with that said, we discussed it. I'll entertain a motion.
Chairman, I'm going to make a motion, throw it out there. I'd like to move that the proposed preliminary plat as outlined case DEV 21-176 be approved, that the findings as set forth in staff report and adopted by Planning Commission as substantiated by facts, testimony, and evidence presented be adopted. I got cramp in my leg, I got to stand up. Be adopted by this board, and that the conditions set forth staff report be made part of this preliminary plat.
Okay, so you're approving it as is, correct?
I'm approving it as
Okay,
is.
is there a second?
Second.
There a motion on the floor with the second to approve case number DEV 21-176, preliminary plat for Lee Shaw's third edition. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Mark Denny.
Yes.
Alan Stork.
Yes.
Jaden Bailey.
Yes.
Will Smith.
Yes.
Bucky Himpel.
Yes.
Tom Dials.
Yes.
Jeff Spink.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you for at least listening to me. I think it was something that we needed to get out.
And Chairman, I understand what you're saying, and that's probably something we better take a closer look at in the future.
I think it is, so
You know, we're dealing with 1 acre lots here,
I know.
and if it had been 2.5, it might have been different.
Well, I think so. And you get farther out, it's probably
Yeah.
even different yet. But again, I was really looking at it being that close to the city limits, and that is going to be the city of Acer at some point in time. I think we all realize that's going to happen at some point. Okay, the Leavenworth County Planning Commission will now hear case number DEV 21-177-178, preliminary and final plat for Roman Ridge Estates. As outlined in the posted agenda, this is not a public hearing item. Staff report.
Good evening, Commissioners. Before you is the Roman Ridge Estates preliminary and final plats, case number DEV 21-177-178. This is located at 23142 McLouth Road, or case 16. And this parcel is 71 acres in size. It is split by the highway, as you can see on the overhead. This parcel actually includes both RR5 and R2.5 zoning, and according to the future land use map, this could be developed up to 3 units per acre, due to its location to Tonganoxie, the city of Tonganoxie. The applicant is requesting a 5-lot subdivision, 2 lots in the triangular piece to the west of the highway, and then 3 lots to the east of the highway. The lots 3 and 4 do not currently comply with the zoning and subdivision regulations, section 50, or article 50, section 40.3.d. This article requires that the property lines properties come out at a 90-degree angle off of the road right-of-way, unless there is a natural feature, a pond or something to the effect that would require something different. So the applicant is requesting an exception to that regulation, and thus this plat is off of consent, and before we are discussing it now. The proposed subdivision is consistent in size with the zoning districts of RR 2.5 and RR 5. The property is not located within a sewer district boundary. Fire hydrants shall be required if the necessary infrastructure is available, and the proposed subdivision is in accordance with the comprehensive plan. I stand open for questions, and the applicant is here to answer any questions that you may have as well.
Questions of staff? I have one. We just had a rezone on a track that's really just almost touching this
Right.
one across the road. It was because it was right next to the Leavenworth County Quarry. We talked about when a plat came that we would want to be mentioned on the plat or somewhere that it was next to the rock quarry and blasting could be felt, and also there was a gun range for the sheriff's department was also mentioned to have on there. This one is just as close to that, and I was wondering, do we want to put that on there or not?
Yes,
and if we
Commissioner.
do it here, I would have a problem doing it with the other one.
Yes, Commissioner, I think that is a good idea. I think that is a change that can be fairly easily made and doesn't need to hold this plat up by any stretch of the imagination. But yes, you were correct, given its location to the rock quarry there and future blasting operations. People who purchase lots should know.
Would you want it on both pieces of property or just one piece of property?
I think both pieces,
Because you got a Highway 16 that separates it away from that rock quarry.
but the plat is for both of them. So if it's on the plat, it'll be for both or all.
I'm sure they still hear it and feel it. Anyway, that was my only. Any other questions of staff before we continue?
I like the idea that it's only just 5 lots and it's not more dense where it's located at.
Yeah. Does the applicant wish to speak?
Joe Herring surveying. Good catch on the rock quarry. That the applicant will most likely have no problem putting that on the face of the plat. That is active, and we talked about the blasting on the other project, and it will be required there, so it should be required here. 5 lots. The layout's really driven by KDOT in this case to get the right access points on the exact lots and then match natural features for the breaking of the line as it leaves 90 degrees from the road and then breaks. It keeps the ridge all on lot 4, which is the goal there. So appreciate your time.
Thank you. Is there any additional information to be presented? Are there any questions or comments, commissioners? I'll entertain a motion.
Yeah, let's see. It's 177, 178, isn't it?
Yep.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I move that the proposed preliminary and final plat as outlined in KDEV 21-177-178 be approved, that the findings as set forth in staff report and adopted by the Planning Commission, substantiated by facts, testimony, and evidence presented, be adopted by this board, and that the conditions set forth in staff report be made part of this preliminary plat and final plat. I would also ask that a condition put on as far as the blasting and the wording like the other one was.
Will be. there a second?
Second.
There we go. We have a motion on the floor with a second to approve case number DEV 21-177 and 178, preliminary final plats for Roman Ridge Estates, outlined in the staff report and adding the part about notation of block quarry and gun range.
Okay.
Is there any further discussion? Roll call vote. Mark Denny.
Yes.
Alan Stork.
Yes.
Jaden Bailey.
Yes.
Will Smith.
Yes.
Rocky Hempel.
Yes.
Tom Dials.
Yes.
Jeff Spee.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. The Board of County Commissioners will consider this item no early than December 22nd, 2001 meeting. The commission agenda is posted on the Leavenworth County website and is available for public viewing. Anyone wishing to attend the Board of County Commissioners meeting or give public comment will need to contact the Board of County Commissioners office prior to the meeting date as space is limited. Leavenworth County Planning Commission will now consider case number DEV 21-169, special use permit for Happy Trails Kennel as outlined in the posted agenda. Requires public hearing. Staff report.
This is a staff report for the Happy Trails Kennel, a dog kennel, case DEV 21-169. This is located at 21918 227th Street. The applicant is requesting a renewal of the special use permit for their dog kennel that they received 6 years ago. This property is currently 40 acres in size, and in looking at this application, the findings that the factors to be considered, we considered the character of the neighborhood. It is primarily rural residences and agricultural uses surround this property. It is on a gravel road. The properties are zoned RR5. The property is suited for rural residences and agricultural uses. This use is allowed with the approval of a special use permit according to our regulations. This area is not likely to be detrimentally affected by allowing a kennel to continue to operate on the property. The property is not vacant. The proposed use will allow a business to continue on the property. And then the future land use map indicates this as a rural or as a residential estate or 5-acre minimum lots on the future land use map. Staff recommendation is for the denial of the special use permit due to the future land use map designation. The kennel has been operating on the site for a number of years now. The county has received no complaints on this property. During a conversation with the applicant last week, they stated that they would like to be able to operate with 20 dogs. The first SUP had 15 dog limit on the conditions. That is all I have. I stand open for questions. The applicant is here to answer any questions.
Can you put the conditions on the map if we decide to go with them? Okay. Any questions of staff before we continue?
Have we had complaints or anything on this?
No complaints.
No problem.
Upon opening the public comment portion of this hearing, those of you who wish to speak either for or against this item upon recognition will give your name and address each time you begin to speak. This is necessary since the public hearing is being recorded. Also notes that public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. The public comment portion of this hearing is now open. Will the applicant please come forward? Please state your name and address.
Jason Coons, 21918, 227th Street.
Do you have anything to add to the report?
No, we've been operating since 2008. We've never had a complaint. We had a special use permit for our previous property, and since then we've moved to this property, built a new facility, and that's the reason for requesting the larger capacity is we have a bigger facility now. So
There are recommendations on the screen there. Have you seen them all? And you do note on number 6 it says 20 dogs. Is that what you would like?
Yes.
If we approve it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That's
Everything else is fine? Okay. Any questions of the applicant?
How long have you been at the new facility? You said
been at the new facility for 5 years.
5 years.
That's the renewal.
I think he's done it right. He's applied for him when he needed to apply for him.
Right.
Any other questions of the applicant? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We will now hear from individuals present wishing to speak in favor of this request. Anyone here wishing to speak in favor? We'll now hear from individuals present wishing to speak in opposition to this request. In opposition. Is there any additional information to be presented?
No, sir.
The public comment portion of this hearing is now closed. Are there any questions or comments, commissioners? The only thing I noted that was left off of the recommendations, which we usually put on for kennels, is the decimal at the property line.
We've had that
it
previously before, and we've always adhered to it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just curious why it's not on there.
Commissioner, that may have been an oversight on staff's behalf. I will say it's a really difficult thing to regulate.
Yeah.
However, that's certainly a condition that we can add again.
Well, it's on all other ones, I would like to stay consistent myself. I think we should, and recommend it on all of them, even though I don't think it's going to be an issue.
If there's no neighbors.
See, would you say again what you're asking for? I got large caliber ears going on over here, and I'm not.
Yeah. There's no close neighbors, but that doesn't mean there will always be no close neighbors either. As we understand, things do change. So, but anyway, I don't think it's an issue one way or the other. And how does everybody feel about the 5-year?
I think the commissioners will change it. If we put it out there at 5, they're going to put it to 10.
Yeah.
So I see no reason why we can't go ahead and go 10. It's an existing kennel. They've had no complaints. I think it follows the guidelines that the commissioners wanted. But every one we've sent at 5 seemed to have been going to 10.
Anyway, yeah, it's that way.
And they'll tell you we can enforce it if we have to. That's my opinion.
I'll entertain a motion.
I have one other just question for staff, and again, it kind of goes back to the consistency, but it seems like we've asked or required, and I'm fine if we don't, if we have reason for it, screening on some of these dog kennels.
So this property, Commissioner, has quite a bit of natural screening on it. There is some area there to the east that we could potentially put some screening on, but it sits very far back on the road.
My opinion, I think this is, if you're going to have a dog kennel in the county, this is like the ideal place to have it. But again, I just am looking at making sure we're covering ourselves. So the next one comes in, we require screening, and they say, well, you didn't require the last guy to have screening.
Sure. So I think we can always make an argument, and again, certainly if the commission wants to add that condition, but each of these we look at individually, and given the heavy tree coverage on this property.
Is that noted in the staff report anywhere?
It is not.
So maybe we just note it in there some way, and I'm not even saying we put it in our recommendations, but somewhere have it noted that the property is heavily screened with existing vegetation, and
absolutely.
that covers us.
Yep, 100%.
Well, I think every kennel we've seen, they're all different locations.
Right, but we do. If you go back, I would submit we require screening on almost every single one.
Ones that we do
Right.
That's
And I'm not saying we
property
do.
line, which
I'm not saying we do on this one, but
this one's really close to a property line, so I don't know if it actually could, but I don't think anybody's going to
No.
worry about it.
No.
Where this one's at this point in time. So.
Oh, but I think Mark raises a good point. It's something we can note in the comments that, the existing vegetation cover mitigates the requirement for screening, but that would be a normal requirement.
Works for me.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll still entertain a motion or any more comments or questions.
You get the script there, but
It's available for anybody.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I move that the proposed special use permit is outlined in case DEV 21-169 be approved, that the findings on the golden factors set forth, staff report and adopted by Planning Commission and substantiated by the facts, testimony, evidence presented be adopted by this board and its conditions set forth, and a staff report be made part of this special use permit. I would also like to add that under conditions, I'd like to change it from 5 years to 10 years. And then how do I want to put the screening in this or not?
I think
No.
we decided to
Okay.
vote on that.
Okay.
But how about decimals at the property line?
Okay.
I'll second the motion.
Okay.
And you added the decimal, 60 decimals at the property line.
You'll never be able to enforce it,
Just consistent with what
Okay,
we're doing.
that's
So
fine.
That's
That's
the
fine.
reasoning.
That's fine. I don't have a problem with it. You got a problem with it?
No, sir.
Tom seconded. Okay, we got a motion on the floor with the second to approve case number DEV 21-196, a special use permit for Happy Trails Kennel, as outlined in the conditions on the staff report, except for changing number one from 5 years to 10 years and adding noise at the property line be no longer
60, isn't it?
60 decibels.
60 decibels.
Is there any further discussion? Roll call vote. Mark Denny.
yes.
Alan Stork.
Yes.
Jim Bailey.
Yes.
Will Smith.
Yes.
Rocky Himpel.
Yes.
Tom Dial.
Yes.
Jeff Spink.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. The Board of County Commissioners will consider this item on December 29th, 2021 at 9 a.m. in the Leavenworth County Courthouse. Anyone wishing to attend the Board of County Commissioners meeting or give public comment will need to contact the Board of County Commissioners office prior to the meeting date, as space is limited. Kansas law allows for a petition protesting the decision of the Planning Commission to be filed. That petition must be filed within 14 calendar days after this hearing. Additional information on the filing of a protest petition can be obtained in the Office of Planning and Zoning. Good luck to you, sir, and the 29th, 9 a.m., right here. The Leavenworth County Planning Commission will now consider case number DEV 21-175, rezoning Chris from RR5, I think, to RR 2.5 zoning district is outlined in the posted agenda. It does require a public hearing. Public comment limited to 3 minutes per person. Staff report.
Commissioners, before you is a request to rezone the property at 28181 207th Street, or a portion of it, approximately 2.52 acre portion of that property, from rural residential 5 acre to rural residential 2.5 acres. The property in question is not in a floodplain. It is in a neighborhood that is primarily rural. It's surrounded by agricultural and residential uses. The zoning and uses of nearby property is zoned RR5. And they're, like I mentioned, rural residences and agricultural uses. The suitability of the property for which has been restricted. The applicant is only proposing to rezone 2.52 acres, which is kind of the northeast portion of their property, so that they can sell that property to another person to build a single-family residence. In addition to that, there was a comment that came in from the Public Works Department that they would have to have a shared drive off of the existing driveway to access that parcel in order to maintain the access management policy. Extent to which removal of restrictions will detrimentally affect nearby property. Based off staff's analysis, we don't feel that the area will be detrimentally impacted. It's a residential use. Most of the surrounding properties are residential uses, so it would match what is existing. Length of time the property has been vacant. The property is currently not vacant. Relative gain to the economic development, the proposed rezoning will allow for another residence to be built. Conformance to the comprehensive plan, the future land use map does indicate this area as residential 2.5, so it is in conformance with the future land use map. Therefore, staff's recommendation is to approve this request. Otherwise, as staff has already mentioned, there would be, whenever they decide to split off this parcel, they would have to have a shared driveway going forward. Otherwise, staff didn't have any further comments for you.
Would that be a lot split or would that be a plat?
Plat.
Plat, so then we would have to approve that
Correct.
shared driveway with the plat. Any other questions? Staff?
I have a question, but it's for the applicant.
Upon opening the public comment portion of this hearing, those of you who wish to speak either for or against this item upon recognition will give you name and address each time you begin to speak. This is necessary since the public hearing is being recorded. The public comment portion of this hearing is now open. Will the applicant please come forward?
Joe Herring, Herring Surveying, 315 North 5th. Staff covered this very well. The desire is to sell off the smallest tract possible, meeting the comprehensive plan, and obtain a building permit for another person with a shared driveway. They are aware of it and agree to it.
You have a question, Rocky?
No,
No?
no, I'm going.
Okay.
I don't think I need to ask it.
Excuse me?
They've already poured the concrete for that.
Yes. Any other questions?
The cart before the horse, We'll now hear from individuals present wishing to speak in favor of this request. Favor? We'll now hear from individuals present wishing to speak in opposition to this request. In opposition? Is there any additional information to be presented?
No, sir.
The public comment portion of this hearing is now closed. Are there any questions or comments, commissioners? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
Looks like I'm going to do it, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion. I move that the proposed rezone as outlined in case DV 21-175 be approved, that the findings on the golden factors set forth in staff report and adopted by the Planning Commission and substantiated by facts, testimony, evidence presented be adopted by this board as a condition set forth. The staff report be made part of this rezone.
Second.
A motion on the floor with a second to approve case number DEV 21-175 rezoning request from RR5 to RR2.5 as outlined in the staff report. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, have a roll call vote. Mark Denny.
Yes.
Alan Stork.
Yes.
Jaden Bailey.
Yes.
Will Smith.
Yes.
Rocky Hempel.
Yes.
Tom Dials.
Yes.
Jeff Spink.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. The Board of County Commissioners will consider this item no earlier than December 29th, 2021 meeting. The commission agenda is posted on the Leavenworth County website and is available for public viewing. Anyone wishing to attend the Board of County Commissioners meeting or give public comment will need to contact the Board of County Commissioner office prior to the meeting date, as this space is limited. Kansas law allows for a petition protesting the decision of the Planning Commission to be filed. That petition must be filed within 14 calendar days after the date of this hearing. Additional information on the filing of the protest petitions can be obtained in the Office of Planning and Zoning. Okay. And we will continue on. The Leavenworth County Planning Commission will now consider case number DEV 21-174, text amendment to the 2006 Leavenworth County zoning and subdivision regulation as outlined in the posted agenda. It does require a public hearing. Public comment limited to 3 minutes per person. Staff report.
All right. Before you is a request to amend the zoning and subdivision regulations. Specifically Article 3, Article 27C, and Article 41. As you guys might remember, when Harmon Farms replat came through, there was a comment that that plat would not be in conformance with the existing regulations as they are currently. However, there was an amendment to the language that was being proposed and would be coming forward with you, which that replat would match. So this is the language amendment that goes with that replat request. The issue at hand was because of County Road 1 and the planned development district, zoning districts that are around that corridor, there were special or more strict regulations put on County Road 1 that required longer distances between driveway accesses. At the same time or shortly after, the access management policy was also put in place, and what you had was conflicting languages that stated two different things. So what we wanted to do was go through the regulations, clean them up, better match them, and make sure that we have driveway access standards that are more cohesive with one another in all the various sections, and match the goals and the intent behind the access management policy as is written. So in Article 3, if you went through that, you'll see that a lot of the definitions referring to streets had been modified. The reasoning is we had actually 3 different sets of definitions for arterial streets, collector streets, and all that buried throughout our regulations. We wanted to combine those all, have one definition for each, so we don't have competing language. In addition to that, we also wanted to clarify high volume versus low volume, so we amended that to reflect the language that was approved as part of the access management policy. So those are essentially the language amendments that were in Article 3. Article 27C is actually the subdivision regulations for those planned development districts, and that was where that language was for the driveway access. So what we ended up doing in that section was pulling out any language referring to access onto public roads and putting it in the access management policy, again, just to reduce any conflict in our regulations. It's now all in one section, which is Article 41. However, since we also had that article open, we wanted to clean that up a bit. So you'll notice we have modified some of the language around the street design to better match what the access management policy was, as well as cleaning up some inconsistencies that were elsewhere in the regulations, such as the minimum lot design standards, better reflecting what is in our minimum subdivision standards in another part of the regulations. The last article is Article 41. That is our access management policy. So the major changes in this section was removing the definitions and putting them in Article 3. So you'll see those are crossed out. And then placing what was in Article 27C, those access management or the access standards, into this article and amending it to reflect what the already existing standards were in the access management policy. I also wanted to note we did put in writing that an exception can be granted with written approval from the Director of Planning and Development, or Planning and Zoning and Public Works, to reduce the driveway minimums as long as it meets the intent and purposes of the regulations. So with that, if you guys have any questions, happy to answer them.
There's a lot of reading.
There was a lot of
back
reading.
and forth, too. Did everybody read them? Did everybody go to...
Question I have is, does it all just apply to County Road 1?
No, it would not all just apply to County Road 1. In regards to like 27C, that actually applies to all planned development districts. It could, I believe there are some areas along State Avenue.
Correct. So Amy is correct that there are some other areas out in the county that the future land use map calls for planned development districts. Primarily, those are along County Road 1, which is part of the reason that as staff went through and was making these amendments, originally those regulations were written specifically for County Road 1. However, you can have those same zoning districts in other places, and some of the language was too strict, especially for other parts of the county. So primarily County Road 1, but yes, you could see it somewhere else, Commissioner.
And it's my understanding that some of the language, or most of the language, lines up, especially County Road 1, with City of Tonganoxie.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions of staff before we continue? Upon opening the public comment portion of this hearing, those of you who wish to speak either for or against this item upon recognition will give a name and address. It's time to begin to speak. This is necessary since the public hearing is being recorded. The comment portion of this hearing is now open. We will now hear from individuals present wishing to speak in favor of this request. In favor. Now hear from individuals in opposition to this request. In opposition. Is there any additional information to be presented? The public comment portion of this hearing is now closed. Are there any questions or comments, commissioners? Or I'll entertain a motion.
Well, I'd move approval of the amendment as drafted by staff with the comment that I thought it was a marked improvement over what was crossed out.
Cleaned a lot
It does
of it
clarify, cleaned up a lot of things. Very well done.
I'll second.
I have a motion on the floor with a second to approve case number DEV 21174, text amendment to the 2006 Leavenworth County zoning and subdivision regulation as outlined in the staff. Is there any further discussion? Roll call vote. Mark Denny.
Yes.
Alan Stork.
Yes.
Jaden Bailey.
Yes.
Will Smith.
Yes.
Rocky Hempel.
Yes.
Tom Dial.
Yes.
Jeff Spink.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. The Board of County Commissioners will set this item at 9 a.m. on December 29th, 2021 in the Leavenworth County Courthouse. Anyone wishing to attend the Board of County Commissioners meeting or give public comment will need to contact the Board of County Commissioners office prior to the meeting date, as space is limited. Leavenworth County Planning Commission will now consider case number DEV 21169, consideration application for a sign permit as outlined in the posted agenda. It does require public hearings, public comments limited to 3 minutes per person, and I think we're the only ones that hear this. This doesn't go to the commission.
Correct.
Okay. Staff report.
This is case number DEV 21168. This is a sign permit for Kane Family Farms located at 17791 Chieftain Road, or 2440. They're just immediately adjacent to Tonganoxie. This is defined as a changeable copy sign, as you could see in the staff report and the application. Therefore, a changeable copy sign must receive approval from the Planning Commission, thus it is before you. This is a sign that is located on the property of Kane Family Farms that is used to advertise their events. The factors to be considered for this sign permit are as such as delineated in the staff report. The sign is not internally illuminated, and external illumination should not, the external illumination that is present should not impact the surrounding properties. The county engineer deferred to the Kansas Department of Transportation, who has not provided comment on this, though we did request that comments. There is no sidewalk along 2440, and so the sign will not encumber pedestrian traffic, and the sign is located outside of the right-of-way of the highway. The sign is maintained and is not broken. There's little existing pedestrian quality in the area surrounding the property due to the fact that it's on a state highway. The sign is the only sign on the property, and the staff recommends approval of the sign permit contingent on posting of bond for the removal of the sign, which, according to communication with the applicant, he might have something to say, a request to make of you concerning that condition. Sign will neither negatively impact surrounding properties nor detract from the pedestrian quality of the surrounding area. With that is my report. I stand open for questions. The applicant is here to answer any questions you may have.
Is the sign out there all the time? It looks like it's on wheels, so they get in and out.
It is. It has been there every time I've driven past recently, so I believe that it is.
Something we can ask them.
Did we reach out to the city of Tonganoxie, or do we typically in these?
For sign permits, we don't typically.
Okay. Just being so close.
It's not within the 660 feet.
It is.
And usually for a sign, they don't reach out to the city.
The property is
Well, I guess it is because it's right across the
adjacent,
road.
immediately adjacent.
Yeah,
But not
that's
right
right.
there,
Yeah, that's
and
right.
we did not in this case.
Okay.
Any other questions of staff? Upon opening the public comment portion of this hearing, those of you who wish to speak either for or against this item upon recognition will give your name and address each time you begin to speak. This is necessary since the public hearing is being recorded. The public comment portion of the hearing is now open. Will the applicant please come forward?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, thank you. My name is Todd Kane, Kane Family Farms. I reside at 17791 Chieftain Road, Tonganoxie. No, I have no comment about this other than to respectfully request that you consider removing the bond requirement listed by staff. It's a $400 sign on wheels with a trailer hitch. It sits out there not as a means to draw people in, but only as an identifier for those that are already coming there, where their event is. We change the sign out each day when there's a change in the events.
Is it out all the time?
Yes, sir.
It is on wheels, so I didn't know.
Yeah, it's on wheels with a hitch. Yep. It's externally illuminated with two solar panels, lights that go out 3 hours after sunset. So it's.
Are these the 5 conditions that are required?
Correct. Yes.
Yes,
There's
according
nothing
to
in there
the.
about a bond. I don't see.
Number one.
Oh, yeah, it is. I'm sorry.
And that is there due to the fact that it is written into the regulations that is required, but the planning
Bond,
commission.
if that has to be removed by the county, well, this one's on wheels. It wouldn't take much to remove it, I would think.
Right. Typically, we're talking about a much more permanent,
Sign.
like a billboard or something along those lines.
In the ground. Gotcha.
Yeah, and I
Right.
would mention there are no
Yeah.
permanent connections to this.
Right. Okay, any questions of the applicant? Thank you, sir. Is any of the individuals here present wishing to speak in favor or opposition to this request? Favor or opposition? The Public comment portion of this hearing is now closed. Or is there any additional information to be presented?
The only thing, Mr. Chairman, Stephanie pointed out to me that your shell may say this goes to the Board of County Commissioners, but as we have discussed, this does not go to the Board of County Commissioners.
It doesn't say it.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
if I might, condition number 1 states that you will require the applicant to post a bond equal to the cost of the removal of the sign. I believe the facts are that the sign is on wheels and could be towed away, so you could still require the bond, but that bond would be set at 0.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, or $1. If you really want to make it something.
I would suggest the burden of having a $1 bond posted and maintained and kept track of is not
0.
justified.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So it's my understanding, in the motion, just a $1 bond, 0 bond.
Commissioners, I think you could find that the cost of the removal of the sign, given its nature, would be nothing.
Okay.
Zero, and consequently, no bond will be
Right.
required.
Okay.
Okay. I don't know if I closed the public hearing portion, but let's close it if I didn't. So are there any questions or comments, Commissioners? Or I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the proposed special use permit as outlined in case DEV 21-168 be approved, that findings as set forth in staff report and substantiated by facts, testimony, and evidence presented be adopted by the board, and that the conditions set forth in staff report be made part of this special use permit. And I also would like to add that we remove the requirement number 1 and do not require a bond.
Well, I think require a bond, but set it at 0.
Okay.
Put it at $0.
Okay, that's fine. Require a bond, we'll set it at 0.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion on the floor with the second to approve case number DEV 21-168. Consider as application for a site permit as outlined in the staff report. The 5 conditions, and number 1, the cost of removal of the sign be $0. Is there any further discussion? Not a roll call vote. Mark Denny.
Yes.
Alan Stork.
Yes.
Jane Bailey.
Yes.
Bo Smith.
Yes.
Rocky Hempel.
Yes.
Tom Dials.
Yes.
Jeff Spink.
Yes.
And the motion carries 7-0. Is there anything else?
No, sir.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Cookies were good.